It is, as Diane said, Evanescence, the poetry of clouds today. And the Nourishment Project encourages curiosity and it pivots on scholarship. Here are some of the references that has informed this presentation. And if anyone should want them, I'll be happy to share them with you. It would be my pleasure. A nebula is a giant cloud of dust and gas thrown out either by the explosion of a dying star or when new stars are formed. So it's effectively a star cemetery or a star nursery. And it's usually hydrogen and helium with gravity acting upon it. And so there's an eternal equilibrium of creation and destruction. That's why I put that Latin quote in there that effectively is saying, "In the end is my beginning." And since there are quite a few opera lovers in Fortnightly, it is the same line that you might find that was found in the embroidered into the sleeve of Mary Queen of Scots in Mary Stuarta. I thought that was just like one of those one-off details people might like. Our Milky Way and the universe has innumerable nebulas. On the left, we see the Milky Way shown from Peru, by Lake Titicaca, by Peru and Bolivia also. And on the right, we see the same Milky Way, this time aligned with Aoraki, which is the highest point in New Zealand. And so there are many nebulas in our Milky Way and in our universe. And the quote we see in there is from the Puranas, which is an Indian text that says, "The world will be set ablaze by the strengthening sun, then drowned by hundreds of years of torrential rain." It sounds all gloom and doom, but it's not. What it's effectively doing, it is a scientific summary of the creation of planets. As an example, this is Venus, seething, pulsating with heat, and covered with clouds. It is also in the inhabitable zone, which is the area of the sun, because the sun is constantly expanding, the heat is going out. And the inhabitable zone is where, as it says, no one can live on these planets. So Mercury, Venus, there is no life form there. Eventually, as one can guess, we too, Earth will fall into the inhabitable zone, but that's years from now. So as of right now, the yellowish clouds of Venus are a concentrated solution of sulfuric acid. And it's highly reflective. And it's the sulfuric acid that gives Venus this characteristic brilliant shine. And beneath the sulfuric acid of this mist, it is searing heat, crushing pressure, and noxious gas. There is no life on Venus. And Venus also has a very peculiar rotation. The sun rises on the west and sets in the east. And the glowing red you see of Venus on the right-hand side is because its average temperature hovers between 700 and 750 degrees Fahrenheit. I always laugh when people say Venus, the goddess of love. Yeah, she's truly hot. She's a hot creature, 700 degrees, super hot. She's more an incarnation of hell than goddess of love to me. And oh, sorry, if we go up. And this is telling. So this is going to put us in perspective in terms of, it's always good to see things from the backdrop of eternity. So in the center, we see about 13.8 billion years ago is what they call the Big Bang. Now, I find Big Bang, the term itself, quite aggressive. So I like to personally call it, this is not a physics term, it's just my term. I like to think of it as a great radiance where all the energy radiated out, because I think creation is rather beautiful. So what they call the Big Bang, I call the great radiance where energy came out. And so 13.8 years ago, life as we know it started. Our story today is going to start at, I'll try to point to it, this point, 4.5 billion years ago when the Earth was formed. So that is our starting point for today. And in the beginning, for millions of years, because right now the time frame is not thousands, it's really millions, borderline billions, Earth's outer shell was changing from a molten liquid fury to a solid state. And the moon is said to have been torn off this Earth and flung into space. And it orbits because it's captured in its orbit by our gravity. So this gravity plays a deal, again, in the formation of clouds and the formation of almost everything that's going on here. And this explosion shaped the ocean basins and the continents. And so when they say the moon affects the tide, it's scientifically true, it pulls the tide. I find it almost beautiful, isn't it? It's a part of our same Earth. It's a connection that will never go away. And so when the moon formed, there was no ocean. And this cooling earth was enveloped by heavy layers of cloud. And for millions of years, no moisture fell because they were immediately reconverted to steam because it was extremely hot. And so this perpetual cloud cover was very thick and did not allow any sunlight to penetrate. And so in this darkness, the ocean basins formed, as did also the continental masses were sculpted. And as the Earth's crust cooled, the rains came down, and the deluge continued probably for millions of years. It's grand and symphonic, and this, I don't know, cracking, grumbling, roaring exaltation. The waters just filled all the empty basins, as we can see, and it flooded the continental mass. Isn't it beautiful? Imagine these lashes of lightning, the deafening thunder of this armada. And it is this terrifying pageantry that our primeval oceans filled with rain. So the oceans are filling up. And this ocean initially is not salty whatsoever. And many of you, I suspect, are very familiar with the work of Sebastião Salgado. If not, you're in for a treat. His photographs are beautiful. And it's called out in the references. Everything shown in the Nourishment Project in these presentations are available online because the internet is such a boon for us. And so what this picture is depicting is that as the rains descended upon the young earth, it continued for hundreds of millions of years. They ran over the land, and it breaks up rock and it transports the minerals down through into the sea. And because of these minerals, the sea becomes saltier. So initially the oceans were not salty. And imagine this earth, as all this is happening, it's just circling the sun. Age after age, this goes on. And it brought to my mind this poem by Rilke, or the stanza anyway. And night by night, down into solitude, the heavy earth falls from every star. We are all falling, this hand's falling too. All have this falling sickness, none withstands. And yet there's always one whose gentle hands this universal falling cannot fall through. One might call this hand, God, life force, call it what you may, but it is very telling because it's one of the mysteries that cannot be solved, and it need not be solved as far as I'm concerned. Because 4.5 billion years ago, I'll point again if I can, you have Earth formed 4.5 billion years ago. And a billion years later, so 3.5 billion years ago, we first see unicellular life forming. And here is what stuns me. Imagine that there is no sun at this point because the cloud is perpetually covering this earth. And this alchemy of temperature, pressure, and saltiness is the creation of life from non-life. I mean, it's truly magic. Diane, you talked about the magic in the 4-Edge books. It is nothing short of a miracle that life forms from this, from absolute non-life. And the operating system, as far as I'm concerned, that reigns over these mysteries, there's nothing artificial about this intelligence. And this first life, this first microorganism was diaphanous form, neither plant nor animal. And because of the lack of sunlight due to the heavy clouds, there was no chlorophyll. So these were not plants at all. You need chlorophyll to have plants. And so as it's timed out, these single cell marine microbes were bacteria and protists. So life began in the sea. And similarly, each of us begins our life in the miniature ocean of our mother's womb. And it doesn't escape me that it's magical again, that the salinity of the ocean is about 3.5%. Very similar is our blood, 4.4% salinity. Our blood has an unconscious recognition of our oceanic lineage. Isn't that, it just takes me surprised. And so a billion years after that, because I'm hurtling through space, so billion years after the unicellular life was formed, we have about 2.1 billion years ago, multicellular life formed. And I'm going to keep hurtling forward in the story. As we move forward, about 700 million years ago, plant came through. And so, how did that happen? Is because over millennia, the cloud started thinning. And so the sun shone through. So, finally, to perpetual night, we now have day. And when there is sun, we have chlorophyll, and which is the molecules that the plants need to convert energy from sunlight. Plants emerged. And so now we have water, carbon dioxide, and chlorophyll, the elements for life as we know it. And so here we are, the garden of earthly delight. We make a presence on this beautiful story of existence. I love Hieronymus Bosch. I mean, it blows my mind that this man never traveled from his city, and look what he comes up with. This is just one of his many works. So we are pretty new to the story. About 10 million years ago is when our life forms pretty much starts off. But Homo sapiens, as we in our recognizable form, we are brand new. We are babies in every sense. We just showed up 200,000 years ago. And it's really something, isn't it? The clouds and sunbeams are effective millstones. What it happens is that the cosmic mill keeps grinding as we spin through the galaxy. And for untold ages, along the highways of the planets and the sun, this cosmic dust has been raining on Earth, entering our soil, into the composition of our soil. And this is a picture from Texas. I think America is so beautiful. And look at the Milky Way from there. It's something else. And it is this soil, this celestial stardust that keeps falling. This is the soil that we harvest. The iron in the vegetables we eat, the minerals that are in our fruits, the nutrients that go into our blood through the fruits that we eat, it's all cosmic dust. Isn't it something, the truly magical? We are made of stardust. We are truly, truly magical. And the clouds, they filter this divinity and they just keep on working. You know, we are rooted to the clouds through the foods we eat, through our stomach, and through the air we breathe through our lungs. We owe the clouds so much. They're not just diaphanous, ethereally beautiful forms. They have a huge function. And the rain's gentle fall, and the frosts and snow's exquisite crystal, and the noiseless rays of the sun do the work of dynamite. And given enough time, the Andes and the Alps will all be crushed to plains. It will not exist. And just as a side note, because I know people in here, a lot of them are great fans of the Art Institute. And about 2-3 years ago, they had a whole depiction of ukiyo-e paintings. And I chose ukiyo-e to depict the sun and the rain because ukiyo-e means floating world. And I thought nothing better than the floating world paintings to depict clouds. And this painting, it's obviously Japanese. It's Amaterasu. She's the Japanese goddess of the sun, and she hid herself in the cave and put the world into perpetual darkness. They enticed her out with music. And I wanted to point it out because it's very central to the identity of Japan. In their flag, it's the rising sun that they depict. This is who is being depicted, Amaterasu. Anyway, it's beautiful. And so as the story continues on, so the snow falls lightly. And here again, we have gravity on and on, over again and over again. Gravity compounds something that is so light. This accumulated weight of seeming nothingness just crumbles crags and scoops out lakes and valleys. And this is a picture at 10:30 at night in Iceland, in Jökulsárlón. There you see floating icebergs lit up by the sun at night. Now there's a piece of ice I'd like to have. And so effectively, clouds mold landscapes. Mother Nature sculpts through clouds. It's really something that I just love learning these as I move along. And as a race, this power, we've worshipped it, and acutely aware of our own physical limitations. Through religion, I think we try to exceed ourselves. And this comes up. Here is when the humanity of it shows up, and our race and our existence comes into the story of the clouds. In the dim nebula of our own consciousness, whenever we pray, or at least we look up to the high. Everything divine is high up in the sky. The ones that we propitiate that who protects us. And that's evident in these pictures. So the Egyptians, their sky goddess is Nut, depicted in the sarcophagus on the relief on the right. There you see her arching protectively over the circular world. And in the coffin from the Fitzwilliam Museum in Cambridge University, you see her again, right in the center. Here she is depicted with the spells from the Book of the Dead. I know Luigi and I were talking about Egypt. Well, here you go, Luigi. Egypt is depicted right here in our conversation. And it's not just the Egyptians, the Greeks too. This is Titian, Danae with nursemaid. And in this story, Zeus, in the embodiment of a cloud, desired Danae, and he streams through the roof into a womb, impregnating her. I think it was with Perseus. She gave birth to Perseus. So clouds are clearly associated with fertility. And the Nourishment Project really is about it's humanity. And I love it when I find connections, how we are all connected. And so the Greek term Zeus etymologically comes from the sky god of the Indian Rig Veda, of the old Indian text. The god of thunder and lightning of the ancient Indian text was Dayus. And so when the Greeks had come into India, every knowledge translates. And so Zeus etymologically comes from that term Dayus. And so Zeus equivalent in Indian text is the god Indra. Before the gods that we know of India now, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, Indra was the one who was most worshipped because he was associated with clouds. And it makes sense, right? You need the clouds because India back then was agrarian and a pastoral society. So they need the rains. They counted on it. So the one that they worshipped was Indra. And Indra, like his Zeus counterpart, was very promiscuous and very naughty. Lots of fun stories with Indra in there as well. But it's interesting, as you see in the quote, so they're saying to Indra, they're saying, "O Agni, full of fire, come down and fill me with your splendor." So one might wonder, what is this fire full of water, full of moisture? Well, what they're talking about is the lightning in the thunderclouds. It's the water-laden thunderclouds with thunderbolts in it, which is the fire. That's what they're hearkening to in this one. And in the 4th century, he's one of the most famous Sanskrit poets around, I guess, Kalidas. He wrote this lyric poet called Meghdootam, effectively translates into cloud messenger. So it's a message from a lover to his absent beloved. It's really beautiful. So imagine a cloud laden with love cascades over your lovelorn heart. That's the entire lyric poem, Meghdootam. If the poet was around today, he would probably use Apple and iCloud and text you, "I love you, babe." Somehow, I don't think I would like that. So Meghdootam, Kalidas has many fans, one of them being Friedrich von Schiller, he who has written the opera Maria Stuart and also Don Carlos. He also wrote the poem that Beethoven eventually took and made into Ode to Joy. And it was Meghdootam's central premise of pining for love shows up in Maria Stuart. And the other fan of Kalidas was Goethe. Goethe was a very fan of Meghdootam and also Shakuntala, another piece of work. And that shows up in Goethe's Faust, I believe. But the work of Kalidas that I absolutely love is Ritu Samara. It's a gathering of the season. So imagine, as the picture shows, a pitiless, merciless, cloudless sky. And I'll read a stanza from there. In the agony of pain, from the sun's fierce rays, scorched by dust on his path, a snake with drooping hood creeps on his tortuous course, repeatedly hissing to find shelter under a peacock shade. I think we can all relate and empathize, even with a snake, the absolute agony of being in a cloudless sky like this. And here, as had been written in the description for today's presentation, here is the carnal manifestation of the erotic sentiment, Jupiter with his beloved Io. This is the Roman version of the story of Zeus and Danae. And here you see cloud-formed Jupiter embracing his beloved Io. And this painting, in reality, shows up in here. Astronomically, this little moon, the moon of Jupiter, is called Io. And I always smile, and I'm so grateful that back in the day, scientists had great, I don't know, education in humanities, because some scientists decide to name with a great sense of humor one of the moons of Jupiter is called Io. And so here we see the actual manifestation of cloud of Jupiter wrapping his beloved moon Io. It always makes me smile that throughout the times, perpetually, these two lovebirds are hurtling through space, naughty and playful. And I love it when scientists give names like this instead of, what is it, R2D2, C3PO. There's no charm in those names. They should really give better names. I suggest it highly. And we also see clouds on almost every culture, every religion. Here, on the right-hand side, we see the depictions from the Dunhuang caves, because some of you have been to the Silk Road presentation. So these are from the Dunhuang caves in China. On the right is a depiction of the power of Buddha, which is Vajrapani. So in Buddhism, there are three principal aspects: the Holy Trinity of Buddhism, Manjushri, which is wisdom, Avalokiteshvara, which is compassion, and Vajrapani, which is power. And power is depicted as in thunder. Vajra is the Sanskrit term for thunder, and it is the same term that's applied to the oldest complete wood block printing that we have, which is the Diamond Sutra. In Sanskrit, it's called the Vajra Sharika Sutra, which is the diamond that cuts through illusion. So what is most fascinating to me in this page is if you see on the left, the relief, this is in the Gandhara area, which is Afghanistan, Pakistan area, because back in those days, in early BC times, when the Greeks had a huge influence in Buddhist sculpture, so you will see the Buddha depicted in toga-like forms. And on the right of the Buddha, you see the form. That's actually Hercules, a statue of Hercules depicting the concept of Buddha as Vajrapani, as power. And Hercules is holding a thunderbolt in his hand, shaped of a diamond. There you see again Vajra. That depiction of clouds, Vajra Sharika Sutra, it shows up in the books, it shows up in their sculpture. I love when things like this surprise me. And beyond just the Hercules picture, Buddhism, the Buddha is often surrounded by cloud form deities. These are called Hitans. And not just in Buddhism, in Old Norse lore, Thor. And Thor is the god of thunder and lightning, both in the poetic and prose Edda. And I guess before the Icelandic gods were violently replaced by Christianity, clouds and thunder again were associated with fertility. And it makes sense because the rains bring crops. And then also in trade, they depended on the cloud to have ships for trade because you need the clouds for wind. So the clouds have a huge hand in shaping our history. So not just with grains, with trade and conquest, all throughout it, clouds have a deep presence. And Christianity itself is rife with cloud symbolism. And I'm only showing El Greco because El Greco is now on display at the Art Institute. I don't know, I haven't visited it yet. I don't know if they're showing this one, but the Catholic Arts of Spain prominently displays clouds, although ominously. But not everything associated with clouds and Christianity is ominous. In fact, the all-pervasive love and compassion of Christ is often depicted in clouds. And I like this Dutch artist. I think you pronounce his name Smilde. I could be wrong. But what he does is he creates clouds here, most appropriately inside a church. But you can hire him to create clouds anywhere, in any setting. And this one is in the Shanghai Himalayas Museum. And so with, I don't know, with precise illumination, the clouds look like beautiful sculpture. And this one is probably something that it struck to me because the background is a painting, a picture of the Himalayas, and he has formed the cloud in front of it. And within seconds, it evaporates as if it had never been there. And I thought that captures the concept of evanescence so beautifully. Real clouds are a bit more complex in their formation. So we're now going to delve into a bit of science, and it's quite fascinating. So in this picture, the greenish, the teal green you see on the background of this blue is phytoplanktons, which are algae. Phyto meaning plant, plankton is that which drifts. And this phytoplankton is the building block of marine life. Phytoplankton is eaten by zooplankton. Zooplankton is eaten by small fish, small fish eaten by bigger fish, all the way up the food chain, like a nesting doll of the Russians, all the way up to the whales. And they have more than one purpose. Phytoplanktons, you will soon see that they have quite a big hand in cloud formation, but they also consume carbon dioxide on a scale equivalent to forests. So they are very essential. Phytoplanktons play a big, huge part in us breathing clean air. And so the phytoplanktons that you see in here, they're algae, and they have this protective chemical called DMSP. It's a bit of a mouthful. Every time I try to pronounce it, it still trips me over. It's dimethyl sulfonneopropionate. I'm just going to keep calling it DMSP. And so what happens, this protective chemical is called DMSP. And when conditions are right, algae, this phytoplankton, blooms. And one case when the conditions are right is when you have lava entering the ocean. Here we see lava off the coast of Hawaii entering the ocean on the top left. So when this happens, when the lava goes into the ocean heats up, and in this nutrient-rich water, the nutrients rise to the surface and the planktons have a feast. So you might ask, how is this related to forming clouds? Well, when these phytoplanktons, when these algae bloom, because of this nutrient-rich water, the zooplanktons come along and they start eating the phytoplanktons. And when they do, the bacteria, the zooplanktons, rip apart the protective chemical DMSP. And what happens is they break it down into DMS, dimethyl sulfide, much more easier to pronounce. So the bacteria rips apart the DMSP in the phytoplanktons, and the DMS is released. And when it is released, and by the way, phytoplanktons are not just blue, they're very pretty. This is by Australia. It's the 12 apostles, this luminescence you see, the bioluminescence, absolutely breathtaking. And it's really wonderful. You can Google this stuff. And YouTube, some people videotape these, they are just beyond eerie. They're magical. One more magic in this world that we live in. Well, phytoplanktons, when they are released because zooplankton fed on it, the DMS is released, and that has that sulfuric smell. And so when you have, this is sea foam. I know a lot of you are probably still in Maine. I know LMA, you're down there. So when you walk by the ocean and you have sea foam and it smells sulfuric, it's because of this DMS. So the sulfur escapes into the atmosphere in the form of DMS. So when this happens, this is how clouds are going to be forming. So whenever clouds form, water molecules need something to glom onto. It's very indiscriminate. It doesn't care if it's soot or dust or volcanic ash. It wants something to leach onto. So when this DMS is released because of a massive phytoplankton bloom due to, say, for example, as we saw, lava flowing into the ocean, the DMS is very quickly converted by sunlight into sticky molecules onto which water vapor can glom onto. And so when you have large amounts of DMS being released into the atmosphere, the water vapors hitch a ride, they rise up into the atmosphere and clouds form. Once again, a photograph by Sebastião Salgado. His work is stunning. So let's look at pretty pictures. This is the tablecloth that they call in Tabletop Mountain in South Africa. It's effectively a tablecloth covering the mountain. And the same tablecloth mountain, what we see now, these UFO clouds, are called lenticular clouds because they supposedly look like little lentils, proteins that we can eat. Here we have what's called noctilucent clouds. They are beautiful. I think they're just utterly stunning. But their recent abundance is somewhat of a warning for climate change, because one of the reasons they form is because of methane. So cattle and permafrost melting releases methane into the atmosphere, and they really rise into the upper atmosphere. This is about at 250,000 feet. And this oxidizes, the methane oxidizes to form water. I mean, these are really frosted in beauty. They're very beautiful, but they really are a warning because at this height, the temperature is less than minus 190 degrees. And so when they're up there, it's a clear marker that we are releasing methane into the atmosphere, which is the ozone layer that we have to worry about. But along with the noctilucent clouds, you have another beauty. This is the iridescent cloud. I always thought this looks like when you have an oil spill in water, if you just flip it up in the sky. Well, the iridescent cloud is similar, but not identical to noctilucent. For this to happen, there has to be a water vapor form that is extremely optically thin. It is so thin, there's only one layer of water. So when the light hits the layer, it kind of diffracts. It doesn't diffract through multiple droplets. It just diffracts around the droplet and the colors get split. And so you can see the light waves interfere with each other. And so you have this magnificent hazy color going through the sky. I marvel at looking at clouds. And they did remind us of rainbows. So this is actually a rainbow. In the rainbow, unlike iridescent clouds, the light does go through the water droplets. It gets bent twice. I'm sure you have seen, even in the pictures of what is the Pink Floyd, the dark side of the moon, you will see that triangle where they show the light coming through and you see the rainbow lights forming. That's actually, that physical description is what's happening in the rainbows. The light diffracts through the clouds, through the water droplets, and it forms the rainbow. And these plants that we see there, this is a picture from Namibia, are, in Afrikaans, I think they call it koker. But these are not actually even plants. They're aloe plants. They're not really trees. And the Bushmen there use these to make quiver. So they call them the quiver trees. And they make quivers for their arrows. And when you see one rainbow, it's always good to see two. Look how pretty that is. Double rainbow. Bless us all. And these foreboding clouds echo lots of thunder coming down. They are rather ominous, but so majestic. And those foreboding clouds also echo probably the turmoil and the madness of King Lear, Shakespeare's 17th century king. And here you see him railing against his sense of powerlessness, because at this point he's blind. And had he read his old history books, he would have realized there was a 14th century Christianity would have taught him to embrace the concept of cloud. Not with the same fervor as the Io and Jupiter, but in this Christianity, it's very spiritual mysticism, the cloud of the unknown. And it's rather beautiful. I didn't know this before I started researching it. And the central message is that God is not reasoned with, it's only felt. That it's not a mystery to be solved, but a mystery to be submitted to. Once again, Diane, to a magic to be felt. And it pretty much says to approach God with love, not reason. And from that perspective of approaching the divine, that painting of Io and Jupiter makes so much sense. To me, it no longer seems sacrilegious. It's really sacred to really embrace the divine. That's what this cloud of the unknowing depicts. But the ancients weren't all philosophical. They had a great sense of humor. So the Aristophanes play the crowds. It's effectively, he's mocking progressive education. So if Aristophanes were around now, he would be making fun of the nourishment projects. And in this etching, what you're looking at is he's making fun of Socrates. He thinks this is all, impractical, all theory, no practical things going on. It's a very short play. It's very funny. And the central characters are the father and son, Strepsiades. And then I think it's Philippides. Philippides he wants his son to be practical so he can help not pay his debt when the debtors come around. It's a fun little book, very quick read. Enjoy it. But it's not just the Greeks and the Romans who loved the clouds. The Japanese did as well. And one of the most famous authors in Japanese lore is Murasaki Shikibu. She wrote The Tale of Genji. And I love this woodblock. I could just gape at it. But anyway, the poem that's associated with this is, I wandered forth this moonlight night, and someone hurried by. Who it was I could not see, clouds driving over the sky. obscured the moon on high. And you can just see the central character, the woman, aching to see is that her lover who walked by spurned her. Because Genji, the central character, he had lots of lovers. He wasn't the most loyal of creatures. But it's so beautifully depicted. And I bring this picture up to show that not just the practicality, not that the clouds just provide us with water, helped us with our trades. Clouds lend beauty, majesty, and mystery to love. And so now let's take a look at the beauty of clouds. And she's a fantastic photographer. Once again, everything available online. These are the mammatus clouds found in the work of Camille Seaman. Blown up, they look even more majestic. And the viscous whiteness complements those that you see here. This is in the salt flats of Uyuni, Bolivia. And just the thin, thin blue line demarcating between the terrestrial and the celestial. Isn't that something? I will go there one day. Fingers crossed. But this picture of the salt flats reminded me of Georgia O'Keeffe's work right in our backyard at the Art Institute of Chicago, Sky Above Clouds. It's just something. Across every culture, clouds fascinate. I'm sure many of us, in fact, probably all of us, at some point or the other from our childhood, has spent time gazing up at the clouds, making shapes, dragons and puppy dogs and Mickey Mouse. I don't know, all kinds of stuff. It never ends. And this cascade of clouds, truly a picture of evanescence, is found in Hokkaido, which is in northern Japan. And in the typical Japanese subtlety, as only they could, I read that the cafe owners at once thought, let's have chairs so our customers can see our background. Yeah, when you have a background like this, they get 600,000 visitors every year. Just sit there, have a cup of tea or coffee, and just watch magic float by you. And I wanted to show you this. I don't know if Tracy Whitehead is here. She's been to this area. This is in India, Meghalaya, which literally translates into the abode of clouds. It's lush, beautiful, and most often shrouded in mystery. And this has nothing directly to do with clouds, but because we went to Meghalaya, I want to show you this. These are the roots. These bridges are actually living roots of the trees. And I love when we can coexist in harmony with nature. Aren't they just something? So these extremely rare and utterly beautiful bridges are formed by the roots of the tree. It's a living, breathing root. I just wanted to show it to you for no other reason, because it's fun. And here we see again this distinct curly Q Chinese patterns that show up in our paintings, such as right here. I have zoned in, I've zoomed in on a section of the keepsake of the cloud painting. But these curly Q clouds you see here are being depicted in the painting here. It's pretty much seeing an ocean mirrored in the sky. It's fun. And this is the view that Captain Cook beheld when he got to the South Pole. At this point, he had faced 3 months of perpetual darkness, and they were waiting to see a sunrise. And a sunrise they did. And when it looks like this, there's no need for words. One more place I want to go to in my lifetime. And I guess we should go through the stars. I mean, the clouds do have definitions. So a quick summary: cumulus, the ones that we most look like, those huge heaps of cloud, is known as cumulus. Stratus refers to clouds that are long and streaky. Cirrus are the wispy hair-like clouds, and they are very high above. Cirrus clouds are one of the highest up there. And nimbus clouds, and these terms then coexist with each other: altocumulus, altostratus. Nimbus clouds are the very recognizable, frightening-looking thunderclouds. So that said, let us have some thunder and lightning, very, very frightening. I don't know, when I see this, I just think we are in Kansas, I suppose, power personified. And this to me just spells impending doom. And when I saw this picture, it instantly, it reminded me of a painting by Goya, which I just love. It's the dog, and it's Goya's. And this dog to me is just accepts the sandstorm that's coming towards him or her. And this ability to have acceptance, to have the courage and acceptance to be released into this is something that I want to aspire to. I'm nowhere near, but I marvel. I love this painting. I thought I would show it to you. Most of you have probably undoubtedly seen it anyway. And when a sky is littered with this amount of malignant violet color, the only thing to do is to go inside and be safe. And I wanted to show this picture simply because sometimes the air features are measured in miles. I mean, look at this thing. I can't grasp it. But the poster child for gargantuan proportions are clouds that form when we have volcanoes. They are a thing entirely apart. This is Anak Krakatau, which is the son of Krakatau that surfaced in 1927. So happy birthday, little baby, because its father, it erupted in 1883 and it was massive. I mean, we've all heard of Krakatau east of Java, and there were 4 enormous explosions that took place and was heard 3,100 miles away. And the energy released when the Krakatau burst was 13,000 times more powerful, more explosive than the Hiroshima bomb. I mean, it's something, it's incomprehensible. The 120-foot tsunamis that, it's documented that had happened because of the explosion. That tsunami killed 36,000 people. And the ash rose up about almost 275 or 300 miles up, and it didn't come down for 3 days. And for over 13 days, the sulfur dioxide spread and filtered the sunlight all over the world. I can imagine how beautiful those sunsets and sunrises would have been, because it really creates just an awe-inspiring filter to see the sun through. But what it did happen for the next, I think, 5 years, the global temperature, because of this volcano, plummeted by 1.2 degrees. That's a huge impact on the earth. This is a picture of the volcano from the Icelandic volcano just a few years ago. And the impact it made on just our airplane travel was horrendous. All plane flights from Iceland, which covered almost all of Europe, it was on a standstill. And I know some of us from Fortnightly there, some of us were stuck in one of the planes coming out of London, I think. And the reason I bring up the volcano, because it's very relevant today. We hear of the wildfires that are going on in California and all the way around. This is a cobbled together picture of a wildfire that actually happened in Northern California. But it's very relevant in the sense when wildfire happens, the intense heat creates an updraft. And so the soot, they go high up. And remember, from the phytoplanktons, the DMS releasing up, all water vapor needs is something to like leach onto. And so the soot works. So in this heat, the soot creates an updraft and forms a cluster of smoke-filled thunderclouds. And they hover around because this funnel of heat goes up 8 miles into the stratosphere. And in that heat, the surrounding air becomes buoyant. And so they can go up from 8 miles and they spread huge across, because this picture is from a wildfire that happened in Canada. We are way on the bottom. The Midwest is way on the bottom. And so wildfires have an enormous cloud effects. And you can Google all of this. Everything is available online. So when these clouds form, NASA gets us free access to everyone who's interested to see how the clouds cover the sky. And this is from 27th wildfire, I believe. And I'm showing this is, once again, we are all interconnected. The wildfire that happened in Northern Canada affects us. Definitely the wildfire that affects, that is happening currently now, raging in California, is going to affect Illinois for sure. We are all beholden to each other. And this picture, something that I absolutely love, because I've been doing these presentations for the last few months, it makes me very happy when members get engaged and they send me stuff. So Nancy Van Duren, perhaps she's here today. I don't know if you're here, Nancy. Look, I'm showing your pictures. 2-3 times a week, she sends me pictures of the sunrises she sees in Florida. I love waking up to this. It's such a joy. And so the picture on the right is you can see the clouds captured in the stillness of the water. And this she views from her room. She's has coffee in the morning to this, I don't know, panorama. But on the left, the reason I'm showing the picture she sent to me is you see almost a band. That band is, they call it the Godzilla, which is the Sahara dust clouds that is going through Florida now. It's been going through it for quite a few months now. And I suppose they call it Godzilla because its massiveness. It provides stunning sunrises, but there's also a great purpose to this. So the Sahara dust has been happening for decades. I mean, it's been happening for a very, very, very long time. And per its name, it comes from Africa, the Sahara, because the Sahara used to be very fertile. And there's evidence of it in the petroglyphics that we see at the Tadras Akakis Mountains in Libya. And the drawings are showing hunters hunting what I think looks to me like bison. Main point being these bisons are grazers. That means these areas were very fertile because they ate grass. So they wouldn't be if it had been a desert. So the entire Sahara was very fertile. But at some point, one of the reasons attributed to this happening is that the earth tilts on its axis, and one of the tilts, the temperature changed and the entire Saharan region became very arid. And so the deserts, the sands of the Sahara are extremely nutrient rich, full of phosphorus. And this computer simulation is showing what is actually happening. This is why you see that Sahara dust storm all across, visible from Florida, is the sands pick up the dust from the Sahara and it shifts across, raining across the Atlantic, and they end up across, showered over the Amazon. Now this wind is picking up this extremely mineral-rich dust full of phosphorus, and this rains over the Amazon, which is very important because the Amazon canopy is extremely thick. It's very dense, so sunlight cannot penetrate. Because of that, it is this dust form, this mineral-rich, phosphorus-rich dust that goes through the through the leaves, enters the ground, and that's what makes the Amazon so unbelievably fertile. And it gives it this verdant, lush, voluptuously beautiful green forest that we call the lungs of the earth. So the clouds continuously provide us shelter, care, and beauty. They are not just pretty things that look like Mickey Mouse and dragons and teacups. They serve a huge purpose. They truly sustain us in every single way. They shape us because they mold landscapes. They sustain us by providing water and so many things that provides us the food that we eat. The cosmic dust that falls on the ground comes in through the minerals that gives us the vitamins that we eat. Tracy Whitehead has been here again. I am so jealous, and she takes wonderful photographs. LMA, please tell her to do a presentation. I want to see the photographs that she has taken. And Diane, look, it perfectly mirrors your magenta top. It's so perfect. You planned this, ha! Clouds. They're sometimes violent and capricious. It's okay. Just like human, they're human in their passions, spiritual in their tenderness, and divine in its infinity. Therefore, I feel clouds embody the evanescence of life itself. Thank you. I'm very grateful that you shared your afternoon with me. And if you like this, I encourage you to go look at the nourishmentprojects.com website so that you can see the kind of work that we aspire to do.